we have had boats since the beginning of Chapter 2. We have this boat that can move around. It's very useful, can even shoot and boost. There is only one type of boat. It is just this one small boat, and that's it. We also have these prop mover devices in Fortnite Creative Mode. We can use these in 2 dimensions by enabling and disabling between two that are pointed in different directions. So if I enable X and disable Y, X can go its advance and reverse that way, or east and west. And if I do the opposite, enable and disable, this prop mover can take this boat, which I've blown up out of a prop in the Pirate Cove gallery. I can move this boat then north and south. I will demonstrate. I've hooked up these prop movers to a signal remote, and that allows me to control the movement of the boat as a player in the game. I've got this boat facing north, and that's the direction of that the movement will start out on. I've got this set up so if I press the left mouse button, it will turn right. It will go then east. First, I have to, what you saw there is a problem with the prop movers pushing me, the player, instead of continuing when they hit me. That's why I had that jerky motion that landed me in the water. It's fine. We just change that to the setting it needs to be. Continue versus push in the prop mover settings. I can use this signal remote, as you just saw, to make the boat move, and I can change its direction. So we'll go east like we did before. The jerky motion is gone. We hit this boat, which stops us from moving, this regular boat. But then I can change direction. I turned right, which would normally make us go south, but we're already colliding with this boat. We have to move away from the boat to keep moving. So if I press to turn right again, we go west. Go that way. I can then press it again to go north. I can change my mind, go back to the west by pressing, to go left by pressing the right mouse button. As you can see here, the boat that we've made does not depend on actual Fortnite water in order to work. It's just dependent on the prop movers to work. And it will stop when it collides with props. So there's a beach up ahead that I've set up as we go east. And when we collide with that, we will stop moving. There we go. Now, the collision shape on this prop that I am using for a boat is a little weird. The collision for this prop comes out to like here where my playable character is, I believe, and up here-ish, up here, but then on the ends it's like right here and right here, the bounds of the collision for the boat object. So it's a little confusing, and it runs into objects kind of oddly because of that, but not super oddly, so I'm okay with it. It is possible that you are wondering, why on earth am I using this prop that is actually like a rowboat that I've blown up very big? Why am I not just using over here what I have, the pirate ship prefab placed down? Why am I not using this for my big boat? Well, there's a problem with doing that, and that is, if you look, this prefab, or even if I took out most of the decorations and made it smaller, it would be made of dozens on dozens. Right now it's probably over 100 props. Fortnite Creative Mode only allows up to 100 prop movers per map. You need 2 prop movers to make each prop move. there is no setting for affect all objects in a volume. Now, if Epic Games adds that, that's amazing. I don't know if that will happen at any point, but so if you want more than one boat, making a boat out of multiple props is almost out of the question. If you want just one boat, you could sort of put it together. It would be far smaller, far simpler than this pirate ship prefab. You might be able to take some of these curved end pieces, put them together without much in between, and have something almost the shape of this. It would be much smaller, of course. I have decided not to do that. You may also wonder, when I showed you how I controlled the boat during gameplay, I was using, of course, the signal remote, which only has 2 commands to it, so I could make it turn right or left, and that was all I had in terms of control. You might wonder, what if you put buttons on that, button devices on that boat, and had them move with the boat as you commanded it to move? By attaching prop movers to the button devices, you're allowed to attach prop movers to devices. That's a fair point. That's one way of doing it. It does not work with this particular prop that I have chosen because of the very odd collision shape. That was my first idea. I wanted to put the button devices like up here, but that collides with the boat even though it's not really in the boat. What it doesn't appear to be, but it is in the boat when I do that. So the prop movers for the boat and the prop movers for the button both refuse to move because of the collision between the two. I want this whole boat assembly to stop moving when it hits a prop, which is fine, but if I have it doing that, like if it stops when it hits the beach, it also stops when it hits itself. And by itself, I mean the boat prop hitting a button prefab, button device, excuse me. I can't do it that way. Now, for proof of concept, to show that it can be done on certain boat designs, for example, if one were to use this piece as a boat, they could blow it up larger if they want that, make it more usable. You can do that. But for proof of concept, I've decided to put this here so I can show you this particular prop does not collide with a button device above it. Therefore, if I interact with this button, the prop and the button move together. So that's neat, and that's one way of doing it. That will work. Going back to my design, the connection between, by the way, you may also wonder what this prop manipulator is for. I did that to make the boat invulnerable to damage. That's just my preference for how I want to set up a game around this going forward. These devices down here are the connection between signal remote prop movers to enable and disable and advance and reverse correctly. That's all these switches and trigger down here. So let me explain how this works. The first thing I do, primary activation and secondary activation, 2 separate inputs from the player. One of them, the primary activation, check a bunch of these switches, 4 of them, and the secondary activation is going to check another 4 of them. So let me show you what these switches do. There's a switch for each compass heading north, south, east, west, 2 switches for each of those. And within those 2 switches, one is for turning right from that direction. The other is turning left from that direction. So for example, I have here, for when it's going east, turn right. When it's going east, turn left, which is over here. For when it's going south, turn left. The turn right switches are all checked by the primary activation from the signal remote. Secondary input checks all of these going left switches. And you may notice right and north going left, those switches are both turned on at the start, all the others are turned off. The goal here is to keep track of the direction the boat is going with these switches. So north and north should be on, or east and east, or south and south, or west and west. Signal remote is fired, and one of these rows of buttons switches gets checked. The switches being checked will all, if they are on, if, for example, south turning right is on, it will then turn off both of the south switches and turn on both of the west switches. So these two that say south will turn off, these two that say west will turn on, and what that means is it is no longer going south but going west. And it's because the south switches were on and the south going right switch was checked by the signal remote. When I first start the boat at the beginning of the game, the north switches are true, and when I hit the left mouse button, it triggered the primary activation, which caused it to check all of the going right switches. Only north going right was on, and that caused north going right and north going left to turn off, east going right, east going left to turn on. So what makes the prop movers actually move? When a switch is turned on, if it is north or south, it will enable move in the Y dimension. If it is north, it will advance move in the Y dimension. If it is south, like this, it enables, as north did, the move in the Y direction, but it reverses the motion. Similarly for east and west, east enables move X prop mover and advances it. West will do the same but reverse. So these prop movers up here, we can see they are connected to, the move X is connected to east and west. There is also, as you can see, a function to disable, an event to disable both prop movers. That's because before we start a motion, we want to stop and disable motion on both prop movers so that there's no confusion about what needs to happen, and so that only one is enabled at a time. Because funny thing about prop movers, you can move them in 2 dimensions by pairing 2 together. You cannot have them both enabled at the same time. So that is something to be careful of. What I do for that is I have this trigger that I call command or, the primary activation from the signal remote, or the secondary activation from the signal remote is activated. This trigger will trigger, why it's called or, and that will always turn off both move X prop mover and move Y prop mover. So whenever switches attempts to move a prop mover, they will find that the prop movers are actually stopped already, even though it's only for like less than a second, so that the movement seems fairly seamless to the player. So that's nice. And that's the gist of this map. I'm working on making this more fleshed out, more of a playable island. That's coming down the pipe in the future. That will be interesting to see. And thank